Look at the critical issue that sits right at the heart of this unimaginable loss.
And to really grasp the scale of this, just listen to these words from Shreveport's mayor, Tom Arsenault. He didn't mince words. He called it maybe the worst tragic situation the city has ever had. That really sets the stage for the gravity of what we're about to discuss.
So, what exactly happened? Well, what we know is that while this was a mass shooting, it all started as a domestic dispute. It was a private conflict that spiraled out of control into a public catastrophe. This number, this is the epicenter of the whole tragedy. 8. 8 young lives were taken. It's a number it's almost impossible to really wrap your head around, and it represents this immeasurable loss for so many families and for the entire city. And these victims were just kids. The youngest was only 3 years old, the oldest, 11. 7 of them were all siblings, and the 8th was their cousin. It was one single family, nearly wiped out in one horrific act of violence. And here's the detail that makes this even more devastating. Police identified the suspect as the father of 7 of the 8 children he killed. So this wasn't some random act of violence. This was a profound, unthinkable betrayal, the ultimate act of domestic violence. So to understand how this horror could have even unfolded, we really have to look at the timeline. The violence wasn't contained to just one place. It actually spread across the city, creating this massive, complex crime scene. So it all happened across 4 separate locations. It began on Harrison Street, where the suspect shot his wife. He then drove to a second home, and that's where he shot another woman and the 8 children. To get away, he carjacked a vehicle, which kicked off a police chase that ended up in the neighboring Bossier city, and that's where he was ultimately killed by law enforcement. But, behind all the awful facts of the crime, there's the immense human cost. And it's so important that we remember the children who were lost, not as statistics, but as the little individuals they were. Jayla Elkins, who was 3 years old. Sheila Elkins, 5. Braylon Snow, also 5. Kayla Pugh, 6. Kadarion Snow, also 6. Lila Pugh, 7. Markadon Pugh, 10. And Saria Snow, who was 11. Now, amidst all this devastation, there were survivors. The suspect's wife and another woman were both shot, but thankfully they survived their injuries. And a 13-year-old boy heroically escaped the house by jumping from the roof. He suffered broken bones, but he saved his own life. An event of this magnitude, it doesn't just impact the families involved. It sends shockwaves through the entire community. And the response from local leaders and organizations was immediate, and it was unified in its grief. This quote from Councilmember Dr. Alan Jackson Jr. really captures that collective heartbreak. He called it one of the saddest days in the history of Shreveport, acknowledging that this was a citywide wound that was going to take a long, long time to heal. And that impact was felt far beyond just Shreveport. The mayor of Bossier City, where the whole thing ended, also expressed solidarity, which just goes to show how neighboring communities were sharing in this grief. And it went beyond just words. Community groups immediately took action. Organizations like Moms on a Mission, they quickly mobilized to provide counseling and support, turning all that grief into tangible help for the surviving family members. From the very beginning, officials and law enforcement were crystal clear about the root cause of this tragedy. This was not a random act of violence. It was the horrifying end result of a domestic dispute. And that's really the crucial thing to understand here, this stark contrast between a private conflict and a public tragedy. It reportedly all began over a marital separation, but it ended as a mass casualty event. And that's the key takeaway. What happens behind closed doors can have absolutely devastating consequences for an entire community. The Caddo Parish District's Attorney's Office made this point so clearly. Their statement reframed domestic violence, saying it's not a private matter, but a community issue with far-reaching consequences, putting the most vulnerable, our children, at extreme risk. The reporting on this also brought up a clinical term for this specific kind of horror: family annihilation. Understanding this definition helps put this tragedy into a recognized, though thankfully very rare, pattern of violence, where a dispute escalates to the point of destroying an entire family. So, in response, community leaders didn't just offer condolences. They offered lifelines. They highlighted specific local organizations. They provided a domestic violence hotline number. And the message was loud and clear. Help is available, and we all have a role to play in paying attention and connecting people at risk to the support they need. And so this is really this central question that remains, isn't it? Shreveport experienced this profound tragedy, one born from domestic violence. In the aftermath, the community grieved, of course, but it also started to act. The path forward, it seems, is built on remembering those 8 young lives lost and honoring them by making sure this kind of violence is never again treated as just a private matter.